take a seat. Join whenever you like. So maybe you can move one space there. Yes. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, almost. It's my great pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the Ukrainian Climate Office to this side event. We are honored to have such a distinguished audience and panel here today with us and we deeply appreciate your enthusiasm for this topic and your commitment to advance in climate action. My name is Florian Eichold. I'm a consultant to GIZ, and I have the honor to guide you through this session today with an interactive discussion, but also with a possibility for you from the audience to come up with questions. The Ukrainian Climate Office is currently a project co-funded by the German government and the European Union with the goal of establishing it as a permanent Ukrainian institution dedicated to support Ukraine on its path towards climate neutrality and energy security. Building a strong network of like-minded governments and climate centers of excellence and sharing expertise as we plan to do this with this event is essential for Ukraine as we navigate this journey. Today's discussion will explore how carbon crediting and other carbon pricing mechanisms can evolve with the potential to transition from voluntary to compliance-based frameworks. We will examine how these policies can mobilize private sector investments for projects that reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but also support sustainable development and align with national priorities, such as Ukraine's Green Recovery Initiative. Please let me introduce our distinguished panelists. I will start with Olga Gazanzadeh. Welcome, Olga, member of the Article 6 supervisory body. Mr. Seiji Jiki, expert from the reform and support team of the Ministry of Environmental Protection and Nature of Ukraine. Mr. Andrei Kitura, Director of Green Transition Office under the Ministry of Economy of the Ukraine. Mr. Nicholas Kreibich, Senior Researcher from Wuppertal Institute, Germany. And Mr. Tuanang Pong Duang Mane, Director of Environmental Policy at Ma Pha Luang Foundation under Royal Patronage, Thailand. I can also call you Jack, I learned. Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for the technical assistance. So this panel, we have some introduction questions, but we also can interact with each other directly. So feel free to jump in whenever you want. I would like to start first with our guest from Thailand. In Thailand, you established in 2016 a national crediting system called TVR. What is your experience with this system, and how do you see it interacting with now global carbon market governance scheme under Article 6, and also with your vision towards carbon pricing system such an ETS in Thailand?
Thank you for having us here as a Mai Falun Foundation. I'm gonna have to
speak
talk
close to the
closer.
microphone.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to talk on the perspective of project developer and also verifier of the carbon credit scheme in Thailand. So we are responsible for about 0.9% of the global emission, and we have a big promise that we're gonna be carbon neutral by 2050 and net zero by 2065. And in 2030, we promise to reduce our emission by 30 to 40%. 40 is like international support from the BAU. So what mechanism do we need to use to reduce our own carbon footprint of the nation? So at the time, we have like a CDM, right? But in Thailand, the price fall a lot, fall down a lot. So we have to create our own system. Okay, I call TWER, Thailand Voluntary Emission Reduction to satisfy a lot of things, right? So compared to a CDM, there's a really complicated process to do, and it requires a lot of resource, expensive, and nobody understand much. Only a handful of people can do. Not many people can afford it. Project need to be very large. Talking about like Vera, also very large at the time we have there. So we TGO create a TGO scheme so that to prepare Thailand to combat with the climate change, to become low carbon society using the money we can get from selling the carbon credits to fund the project that cannot be otherwise exist. Okay. Mm-hmm. So TWER actually follow the ISO standard. Okay. So ISO 14064-2, which is like how we do carbon credits. And the project has to be verified by ISO also 14064-3. And the organization has that we are validator and verifying body also has to follow another ISO, right? So basically, it's a standardized. So now we have a register. Actually, the TWER project start in 2014, but actually on the board of 2016, we have the number there. Right now, we have like 468 project registered and about 13 million ton of CO2 of carbon credits equivalent, ranging from waste management, energy efficiency, renewable energy, transportation, and forestry agriculture project. Okay, generating about 20,000 credits. Okay, from that. Okay, well, right now we have 175 projects that we can buy an offset. Okay, market is not a lot because it's still voluntary, has no mandate to do. Or only people that does this, it's just like for voluntary purpose only. So about 5%, 5% of the credits get sold. All right. So about 3 million ton get sold. So and then later on, TGO developed what's called premium TWER. It's comparable to Vera. Actually, we signed MOU with Vera and we adopt some of the methodology to be on a premium TWER, and it can be used on Article 6, and also we applying to use this as a CORSIA carbon credit scheme as well. Yeah, and then in the 2 years time, we're gonna have our climate change law passed. So we're gonna expect to have ETS, which the 50% of the allowance that the company need to buy can be used by credit, kind of premium TWER credits.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Thank you very much sharing this experience. I would like to now turn to our colleagues from Ukraine Olga and Sergey. First of all, Olga, congratulations for making progress with the 6.4 mechanism. You started this COP with positive signals that things can be done, and we are moving forward. So congratulations for that. But now we are talking already about implementation. So which role could the voluntary carbon market and Article 6 mechanism play in Ukraine today, but also with a perspective, what we have learned now from colleagues from Thailand, with a perspective of an ETS in the long run. This question is also a question to Sergey then, who can share his experience as well. But first, you, Olga, please.
Thank you very much. And I'm really grateful that I get a chance to speak after a colleague from Thailand, because this is a very interesting, very important experience for Ukraine as a country, because we're also working on an ETS. You know, we have huge, what we thought originally were huge transition needs, but we will have huge reconstruction needs. We still have industries. We still have actually economy, we still have emissions. And we will be entering, we will be building our own ETS. And we also know that, you know, actually we are on the path to join EU ETS when Ukraine becomes an EU member, which we fully expect will happen within a certain timeline, but we still have time to prepare for that. And it's very important to try to combine various mechanisms on that sort of on that roadmap in a way. We have started with the MRV law, you know, and preparing the reporting first, and then obviously, you know, there'll be introduction of the ETS. They will, you know, Sergey will talk about it more, but you know, Ukraine is working on Article 6 potentially. And interestingly, actually, when it comes to Article 6, you know, other than 6.2, which sort of mostly bilateral, plus the independent standards for 6.4, you know, there is a surprising approach that Ukraine actually might be able to take, in that that was originally reserved for countries in very different environments, and that one is of suppressed demand, is when you are addressing basic needs that are not currently being met. And we do have communities that have been completely devastated, right? And that the rebuilding the energy supply network, that we still need to supply our citizens with energy, which we had before, but we don't. And there are of course complex questions, you know, on how to structure it, how do you methodologically approach it. But the different combinations of things that can be used, say in 6.4, it can be some types of projects, it can be something else in 6.2. I would also encourage our policymakers to learn from the experience of Thailand, to have a domestic scheme, possibly domestic offset certification scheme, also with the view that you know, Ukraine will eventually become an EU member. EU will have our carbon removal certification framework. So learning from that experience and sort of implementing something similar as a trial, on a kind of a trial basis, for corporates that we know still exist in Ukraine, that are very active, and also for other investors that will be coming in Ukraine and sort of rebuilding. There can be sort of an ecosystem of mechanisms that Ukraine can utilize, because we can't say that'll be one source, right? The needs are so humongous in reconstruction. But it's also important to note that the needs are humongous everywhere else when it comes to climate change. Our needs are just, you know, they're just different, and we need to then carve out what is it that's important for rebuilding in a green way, and also for reducing the remaining emissions, because now Ukraine has a climate change law with their neutrality target set in 2050, and we need to get there. And a very important aspect of the implementation of that law, and it matters a lot to Article 6, is that how you identify what is that you're planning to do and how you're planning to finance it. Because, for example, in 6.4, we said that unless you specifically indicate in your regulatory framework that Article 6 is how you plan to finance something, if you put it into a law, it's your obligation to implement it. And there are no carbon mechanisms that should be available to you to do it. So that's kind of one of the things. And I know that, you know, so far the approach has been top down, but now it needs to be underpinned with more regulatory framework that would specify, okay, this will come from loans, this will come from carbon finance, this will come from something else. And it's actually a task for our policymakers to sort of think this through and also be very specific, because you need to have this clarity for those that will be assessing how projects are being implemented, to assess, you know, where they fall, because projects need to be additional. The carbon component needs to be verifiable, traceable, applicable in the correct methodologies. So all of these things that, you know, we're now facing regulatory uncertainty, they would need to be clarified in order to be able to certify, you know, the greenhouse gas impact of the activities.
Okay, thank you very much. I guess I hope the policymakers will hear you and will benefit also from this expertise, because you know, I have experience where are the pitfalls, where are the opportunities, unpacking the whole system. That is very helpful, but I guess they need also all your assistance to do it right and to benefit from this mechanism. So Sergi, you have to jump off later on, so we want to benefit from your expertise as well. How can Ukraine use the current Article 6 framework for now, with this potential perspective also going into an ETS or other national systems that can come up sooner or later?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, and also making a small introduction or coming back to the topic of our panel today, that on the green recovery. And we have heard from the Ukrainian government that we need green recovery, and it is essential. We also see steps that Olga, for example, mentioned, that we have a law. We also have EU integration obligations. The government is working on the updating LTLETs. However, the scale of the damage caused by Russian aggressive war is huge, and thus making recovery green makes it also more expensive. So in this case, I see carbon markets and Article 6 as one of the tools that may foster green recovery. Probably as one of the elements, how can we get closer there? And for example, how can we achieve not only our green goals or emission reduction goals, but for example, strengthen our energy security as one of the possible outcomes of applying Article 6. Talking about what how we are planning to use Article 6. I would rather focus on our work right now. And well, probably Article 6 is quite a new topic and quite a new tool for everyone. So in Ukraine, I would say we're also learning by doing a lot like other countries. That means that we need so many discussions sometimes. We need to consider, well, talking about green recovery and Article 6. In Article 6, we have environmental integrity and how to make recovery green. First of all, we take a look on the guidance that we have from the CMA, how to ensure environmental integrity. And also, I think that in the future, it will also crucial to broadly engage with stakeholders while establishing other criteria to ensure that the government may authorize activities, let's say. Regarding the questions you mentioned, I think that that probably I'm not sure that there is an answer for how Article 6 and ETS will work together in Ukraine, because we're still working on both, and how it will be combined, I think, has to be probably broader discussed and decided. So we'll see.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Before coming to Andre, who will show us a little bit what are the investment opportunities and projects, and he has prepared some slides, so we will look at them carefully. I would like to turn to Nico from the science point of view. Nico with Wuppertal Institute, you're working, observing policy-making processes, you're analyzing, you're independent, you're supporting governments, but also giving guidance to private sector with your research activities. What are the key considerations regarding suitable climate policy instruments, and how to incentivize investments towards key economic impactful investments?
Okay. Well, first of all, also thanks for having me, for inviting me today. Well, that's a broad question, I think. What we've seen in particular with regard to the VCM is there is in many countries still potential to further strengthen capacities, national capacities, to fully understand the diversity of credits or uses, how credits could be used by the different actors. So that's in particular, of course, in the if we're talking about the voluntary carbon market, it's corporates, but also other type of organizations. We can see that there is interest to provide funding to support activities on the ground, but at least if you look at Germany and the situation in which many companies are, that there is also a lack of certainty there, which claims could be made on the basis of the carbon credits bought. So this is, I think, one aspect that also host countries must take into consideration when preparing for or when analyzing the potential demand and potential investments for projects on the ground. So I think that's definitely a key aspect, to really understand the different potential sources of demand, to understand the different use cases, evolving use cases. So we're now having also a lot of risks and challenges with the offsetting model, so carbon offsetting, with projects lacking quality. There's another new model coming up, which is the climate contribution model or contribution claim model, which is also somehow covered under Article 6.4 with the mitigation contribution units. So there is a specific type of unit that can be used for this alternative approach where corporates can support climate action outside their value chain without making claims such as carbon neutrality, which will become much more difficult to make, at least in Europe. So there is a broad range of opportunities, and for the country to really incentivize and attract investments, I think first having clarity about these different opportunities is key. And yeah, then of course having these legal readiness and institutional readiness will also become more relevant at a later point in time. But first, a clear assessment and yeah, managing the expectations, what really could come in terms of investments would be key, I think.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Nico, for pointing to the fragmented landscape of carbon markets and the need to understand this properly, and not overestimating also what can come from this carbon market in the short run. Now, turning to Andre. Andre, what is the landscape of investments ready for decarbonization in Ukraine? You have prepared a short presentation with some slides. Maybe for the panelists to see that, maybe you take for a moment a seat in the audience, and then after Andre finished, you come back. Yeah, thanks, Andre, for preparing some numbers here for us to digest.
Yeah. Next slide, please. Okay. Before the session, I took some time to.
The microphone, is that working? Maybe you take mine.
Can you hear me? Great. Before the session, I spent some time just to learn more about Thailand experience, because it was really thank you very much. It was important to understand the achievements and the progress. And almost 15 years ago, I was lucky to be part of the team which started working on partnership for market readiness in Ukraine. It was a World Bank project, and in 2010. It looked like Ukraine could have emission trading system really soon. Unfortunately, 15 years after that, now I really understand why it was impossible at that moment. Next slide, please. But we have I believe enough conditions to do it right now, or at least during a few next years. Ukraine joined to Paris Agreement. We are going to be part of the EU. Our government is working on implementation of emission trading system in Ukraine. We have MRV, and we must relaunch it, and hopefully it will be done next year. Also, we adopted National Energy and Climate Plan, and why it's important, because emission trading system is part of that plan. Also, the plan means for us a huge additional resources which should be involved from public and private sources. It's it's approximately more than 40 billion of euro just to implement all policies. Next slide, please. So what basically we did, carbon market is the added value of carbon market is the opportunity to find the cost efficient way for decarbonization. So far we don't have the market, but we have a lot of concept ideas and concrete projects prepared by different stakeholders for different purposes during a couple of last years. We collected all information regarding the investment projects collected together with the government during the preparation for last Ukraine Recovery Conference and identified more than 600 different projects. The idea was to analyze which of them are in line with the EU taxonomy, with IFI's green economy criteria, etc. So as you can see, like we do have more than 200 projects which potentially could be part of, let's say, our next steps in this long net zero pathway. And most of them are dedicated to energy sector, but also we have a huge potential in metal and mining industry and manufacture. Next slide, please. We used the next slide, please. Yeah, we applied the same approach to so-called single project pipeline. It's a list of 750 projects prepared by Ukrainian government. Like that projects should be like part of our strategy for recovery after the war. And like a big insight for our team was that not so many projects would be green by default, but we will have like a huge potential almost in each bar. I mean that there will be many projects which potentially could be green if we will apply needed technology or approach. Next slide, please. Also, we have in Ukraine different instruments to attract investments and to make it in, like, let's say, transparent way. Like on the previous slides, you saw spreads of 400 different projects per different industries. Like I believe like there's a huge part of them will be implemented through Ukraine facility, decarbonization fund already launched in Ukraine, other instruments, but also many of them should be part of our emission trading system. Basically, that project will be like the on supply side will produce carbon units for internal stakeholders or potentially for external. And we have this potential right now during the war. And like if we will assume that we are going to like build our country in a way as it's defined our strategy, energy strategy, for example, to be an energy hub for the EU, etc. It means that like this potential for decarbonization will be even larger. Also, I want to touch really shortly one of, let's say, not conventional way to use this opportunity. We also analyzed in details the structure of Ukraine debts. You know that this year our debt will be higher than our GDP, and this is a huge problem for our government. The idea is as following: like we want to try to implement in Ukraine like climate swaps scheme. Like we identified a few creditors who has like a big part of our debt, and all of them has a really long history of using climate natural swaps, and they have really comprehensive climate change strategies for next decades. The idea is to suggest them like write off a part of our debt, and Ukraine will use this, let's say, this reduction of our cost to invest in decarbonization in particular projects which will in line with the criteria used by, for example, our partners. Thank you. That was like the last my slide.
Thank you.
Like to sum up, the idea is like we are moving on simultaneously on different directions. Well, in one direction, but simultaneously on different projects. Our government Ministry of Environment will be focused on implementation emission trading system in Ukraine. Ministry of Economy is keen like to supplement this job in terms of like produce concept ideas for projects. For example, it could like we could work together for joint credit mechanism. It's one of mechanism under Article 6.2, and Ukraine has already signed a memorandum with Japan and like like it could be kind of pilots for Ukraine, and hopefully in future we'll have a 6.4 and the emission trading system, full scale emission trading system in Ukraine, and then part of the EU. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Andrei. Please, yeah, applause, of course. Please, an applause for this. Thank you for this input. And now I would like to turn again a little bit to an open discussion. You can also bring up your points that you think have to be discussed, and you can also interact with each other, of course, after turning to you again. Also the audience, if you have any questions, please give me a signal, and of course I can incorporate your questions. I think what we have heard, let's try to talk a little bit about the relevant sectors that could be addressed first. You spoke about first experience maybe made under 6.2, but here my question would be, which are the sectors selected? Is that does that coincide with the priorities you identify, Andrei? But also there is bottom of the pyramid investment needs. Olga, you spoke about the needs to provide again renewable energy to people in Ukraine who do not have energy access at the moment. So is the energy sector one of the priority sectors for Article 6, or other sectors like agriculture, which is a huge sector? Where are there maybe potentials? Open question. Anybody?
I may start, and probably my answer will be quite short. Well, first of all, these sectors are part of our NDC and may be Article 6 activity. I'm not sure that it would be a great idea to pick up just some of the sectors covered by the NDC. Maybe it would be better that the more sectors, in more sectors activities are possible, the better. And taking into account all the damage to our energy infrastructure and also to the agriculture sector, including need of demining and also adaptation or mitigation co-benefits, and yeah, well, in generally, agriculture sector is huge in Ukraine, and during the war and climate change effects, I think it is obviously one of the priority sectors for Article 6 activities.
Okay. Any other comment, Olga, maybe?
I think I'd focus on technical points. You know, when and at least 6.4SB looks at Article 6 and how an activity, whether an activity is eligible. A lot depends on how the host country has formulated what is eligible and what's not. Ukraine is still, in the process of thinking about its Article 6 strategy, both 6.2 and 6.4. And these decisions in a way would inform, what would be applicable. And I fully agree with Serhiy that, there should be a broad range of things, because I think not just that the needs are great, but also I think the ingenuity is there, the entrepreneurship. So sometimes you just don't know what is it that you will see if you are broad and if you're encouraging action. So then it's up to the government to assess. I think, as I was saying, it's important to demarcate where is that the government is acting, what is going to be financed through other sources, and what is that you expect to finance through Article 6. And there can be a lot of things. But yeah, I think that.
Yeah. Okay. Also broad range. Keep it open, not closing the door for anybody, and invite a broad range of actors. Innovation. Andre. Yeah.
Probably I will not say nothing new for you, but like my idea is to be as simple as possible and as efficient as possible. Like to identify the key sectors, you should know basically the answer for two questions. The first one will be, who is the biggest sector in terms of GHG emissions currently, and what is the potential and how much it will cost to reduce emissions in particular sector. In Ukraine, energy sector, I believe, still is responsible for something near 30-35% of our total GHG emissions. And maybe something interesting for you, that agriculture together, like agriculture in IPCC is divided into different streams. But like if we combine all emissions related to agriculture, it will be again 30-35% of our total GHG emissions. So two very obvious target with the largest like maximum potential. But what we don't know right now, how much it will cost to reduce emissions, because like we don't want to have in Ukraine market just to have market. Like it should be an instrument, like cost efficient instrument for decarbonization. Like if the price in our Ukrainian internal market will be too high, it will be like additional negative impulse for businesses, for country in general. That's why we should be focusing on to find the way how to do it with less cost. Like what we are currently doing for that, we are working on a carbon budget for Ukraine. So we are analyzing the potential and the cost for decarbonization in different sectors. We want to have like a broad picture and identify, let's say, marginal cost abatement curve for the country, and like it should be the instrument for the government to take decision based on data. Hopefully, like it will be achieved during next 2 years.
Okay, thank you. And turning again to your experience in Thailand, you said 50% of the ETS compliance, 15 can be covered by TVR units from the national scheme. In which sectors do these investments flow, and from which sectors do carbon credits from the national scheme come from? What is in the end the result of this framework? Do you have a broad overview on which activities are implemented through this demand?
It might be a little bit too early to say, because it's just the regulation, the Climate Act just passed the public hearing. So it needs about 2 years from now to get into action. And ETS gonna come a bit like 2 years after it falls into play, right? So right now at the moment, so the government say 15% it can be used as an allowance, but it cover all sector. And for major emitter, I would say that expected to be on board on the ETS. I don't think it's gonna be everyone, but it's just like the one that emit the most. Okay, but what I'm gonna say is that there's several ways, that we can mobilize money from the fund from the private sector. Okay, in Thailand we have like TWER, okay, for standard TWER and premium TWER. For premium TWER, of course, it can be used for international purpose, like Article 6. We've done this, I think 1 or 2 years ago with the Switzerland government, the electric bus that we expect to Swiss gonna invest for electric bus, right? For in Thailand, and Swiss gonna take back 500,000 ton by 2030. So in return we have electric bus. Some Swiss invest for us. That's good. And and also for premium tier, it can be used for the offsetting the allowance, use as allowance, right? So it's say in the act say that need to be the quality of the carbon need to be applicable for Article 6, even though it's used within the country. Okay. And also in Thailand, we can mobilize private sector fund by using the standard keyword, because it's just within the country to solve particular problem. Let's say in Thailand, we have PM 2.5, the smog problem, and people like mourn a lot about it, like, oh, but you burn. Like most of the time, it's a smoke come from forests, and the people who take care of the forest is communities. So, but the problem is that this community doesn't have enough fund to take care of their own forest. Sometimes they have to invest their life, to put out the forest fire. So having this particular community to take care of their own forest with the support from the private sector through the carbon credit program, it's win-win-win.
Okay.
Everybody win.
And I've seen in the national program, you have also all the documents in Thai and local language. It's not it's accessible to local stakeholders, and I guess it's very comfortable also to facilitate local investors, local companies to access this market and initiate projects. What could this, or is that a positive thing? You think a success story? Is that something that other countries could learn? Or what, maybe with the experience from the national accrediting system, what would you advise Ukraine, for example? Do you have any hints, any things you would do different?
Or for standard keyword, it's going to be less stringent compared to VERA or compared to premium keyword. So it's like applicable for small projects, okay, within the country. So, it actually a lot cheaper to do. So, and then it's going to be a lot of projects that can be done, then we can use the fund from the private sector. And of course, the private sector has to be a good one. So they have to have like a net zero pathway, to use this carbon credits as a way to utilize the unabated portion of the emission only, and so not greenwash, okay, but at the same time helping communities by using their basically CSR money. Usually they would give money anyway, right? But giving to the community, they would make sure that things happen the right way. Yeah.
Very interesting. Also, I think Nico, there are some shortfalls in the voluntary carbon market where things didn't happen in the right way because of lack of international and national oversight. What are your takes on that?
I don't want to be the party crasher here, like bringing in the negative news. So no, but of course you're all aware of these quality issues on the voluntary carbon market. Also some misleading claims, and where investors and consumers have been put in a situation where they made the wrong decisions, consumer decisions or also investment decisions. So I think having that in mind to also establish requirements for these companies to have a robust targets to be in line with these targets is crucial, and it's also what is happening in Europe, and which as you rightly point out is relevant for the Ukraine. What I think was really interesting what you said, Olga, about the getting an overview and clarity where could funds come from, like climate finance, other support programs, private, public, And that should be the starting point, I think. Also to really understand these potential sources and the potential uses. Well, you asked a question to me, but I would also raise one question, because we're talking about Article 6 here, and at the same time alignment of Ukraine to the EU framework, to the EU more generally, but also EU climate policy. How do you think can this alignment happen with regard to Article 6? Because the EU currently is not planning on using ITMOs, and is not, as far as I know, is not planning to authorize ITMOs neither. So is this something you're considering? Are you then more focusing on these contribution type of units, or this is this under development still? And as everything is under development, even the CRCF, the carbon removal certification framework you referred to, which is also like one internal tool. But that was one question I had in terms of aligning these Article 6 strategy and having the EU in mind.
Right. I think I just need to emphasize that, you know, I'm not Ukraine, right? I'm just an expert who works in Article 6. And I think, you know, we have to be realistic, in my personal view, that that Ukraine is not going to join the EU tomorrow. That there is still, you know, there is a sizable timeline ahead of us to prepare. I also hope that the EU is going to be realistic. That EU ETS started in the EU in 2005, and 20 years to develop to get to what is now phase 4. Right, would be very hard for Ukraine to start at phase 4. But these will be, I'm sure, very complex negotiations between the European Commission and Ukraine, as Ukraine is getting closer to accession. But, you know, it will take quite a number of years. So in the meanwhile, there's definitely opportunity for Article 6. And beyond that, we will also sort of see, you know, how this develops inside the EU, because I do know that there are calls for the EU to open up EU ETS also for offsets, and it, you know, or also EU can start buying. You might have seen Joost Delbeke has put up a paper that sort of outlines the sort of potential scope for EU to engage in international carbon markets in 2040. So to be clear, they're not thinking of doing it before that, but 2040, and, you know, maybe that's kind of also where we're coming into the picture as well. I think there's more linkages, you know, between how, say, CRCF is set up, and how things can happen inside Ukraine, how like Ukraine can copy the Thai experience, because CRCF is very close to sort of to a domestic offset market. It's not yet, because the use cases have not been finally defined, but it can become, and it's much simpler than it's much simpler than the independent standards like Vera and Gold Standard. It's, you know, an independent standards and it's much simpler than 6.4, for example, right? So yes, actually, when you look, all countries are developing their own domestic offset mechanisms that are applicable just in their country, right? And it's not meant for exporting, but it's meant as a sort of an additional financing mechanism inside the country. And it's interesting how I found it's interesting how the EU is thinking about CRCF is that it just stays inside the country. So it can be simple, right? Because you know, yes, it may be not, you know, the claims have to be clarified, and I fully agree with that point. But if it's, say, ESG, right, and you're spending money on ESG, it's much better to certify the impact of your activities than just to make you know, some sort of description, right? If you can certify and quantify what you have achieved, it's really a lot better than just spending money on ESG and saying, well, you've financed this and you've been engaged in local communities, but you can actually, you know, also quantify and verify and get credited for what you have managed to do. So it's an, as I was saying, it's an ecosystem of things, and then Article 6 is just one of them.
Thanks a lot.
So I understand there's kind of the idea to have maybe a domestic offsetting market as a quick start, also as a low entry level system, and maybe learning from this experience could also then make the step easier towards international units. Is that the potential pathway?
That would be my recommendation to the Ukrainian government, that's where they should try to focus on as well. I mean, while they're working on Article 6, you know, while they're working on the ETS, but you can also have simpler things. And that's also very beneficial to the economy. And you know, Article 6 is supposed to be higher tier, you're doing corresponding adjustment, you know, it's much more complex, but you can also have, you know, very, very simple things. You know.
And I understand in Thailand also there was a kind of evolvement from a national system and then moving towards more international CORSIA eligibility. So a second step of evolution. Is that, can that be observed, or how did that happen, this step?
So the T-word, premium T-word is after 2022. So we start a premium T-word. Like I told you, it's like almost exactly the same thing as like Vera, or we adopt some methodology. So this can be accepted by hopefully international market. So first we try with Switzerland, Article 6.2. Second, we are trying with the CORSIA. This is a final round already. So if it passed CORSIA, we hope that international market can accept our premium T-word, so it can be used elsewhere, you know, throughout the world. But for within the country, like you said, we need something that can be simple to do, you know, and like don't complicate things. And we have verifier also. I'm also a verifier. If my clients ask me to verify if the program is eligible or not, they install like a change the chiller. They actually change chiller, you know, but we inspect that they change chiller, how much a kilowatt can be saved. That's it.
Yeah.
You know, doesn't need to be a lot of additionality. Just accept that it's there and look at the bill. It reveals. Simple.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Are there any questions from the audience? Yes, please, over here and there. Yeah.
Sorry. Hello, thank you. Quick question, Ray from Quantum Commodity. I've been speaking to a few other Ukrainians over the last couple of days, specifically about the ETS market that has been looked into, and they mentioned the current issue being that you need 2 or 3 years of history worth of emissions data in order to set it up. Obviously, given the situation in Ukraine, that is not very feasible. Maybe the question is a bit difficult because obviously we don't know when the war will end, but how to go about this? Or do we, once the war is over, then have to wait 3 years before we can actually implement something like that? So that's sort of my question.
Okay. Yeah, how to set up the MRV?
Thank you for the question. Unfortunately, we don't have here a representative of our government. Still, like all of us are experts, and we cannot speak instead of them. But My personal position would be not wait 3 years. Definitely, we need to have historical information. But 3 years means that we will need after that a few years, defining all the rules, allocations, etc. And in that way, we will not have the market next 5 or 7 years. What we could realistically do now, we could at least relaunch MRV. We could, let's say, identify each installation, and we could work together, I mean, our government experts, etc., on different approaches to quotas, to allowances allocation. Maybe it would not be based on historical information. We could use benchmarks. We could use not maybe the same benchmarks as in the EU, because as Olga said, they spent 20 years to be where they are right now. And if you remember, first 10 years was kind of nightmare in terms of pricing, demand, different, you know what I mean. We should collect some historical data. This data should be as accurate as possible, but unfortunately, Ukraine has not so much time to wait another 3 years.
Yeah, thank you. And there was another question over there. Yes, yeah.
Thank you very much. My name is Anna Zhatenko. I'm from UNDP. My question is about the public service sector. As UNDP supports the development of energy service market to attract private investment in thermomodernization and installation of distributed generation capacities in public buildings and municipal facilities. And my question is, can ESCO projects be eligible for CO2 trading? This would boost this market greatly. What do you think about it? Thank you.
Yeah. Distributed energy on public buildings, or would that be eligible for carbon trading? I mean,
again, I'm not the representative of the government, and second, unfortunately, I'm not expert in this particular sphere. But what I know, it's not such cases are not part of emission trading system in the EU, and I'm not sure whether it would be part of EU too. I mean, when we will have in the next 4 years, like we will increase the scope of the emission trading system and include transportation and buildings. And so far, it's not clear how it will work. But potentially at that moment, at least in the EU, we will see kind of approach how to include that sectors and whether that units could be tradable and how to verify such data, etc. From technical perspectives, like what basically ESCO is, like you have a baseline, you have some changes, and like a new line and some difference between them. The additionality, what we basically need for typical carbon credits. So theoretically, I believe it could be implemented, but maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know any examples when somebody in the world implements such approach.
Well, maybe my answer would be, I think under certain technology, under certain circumstances, that these projects could be quite interesting for carbon trading because they are not really low-hanging fruits. We are not talking about large-scale renewable energy plants that have been perceived as non-additional generally anymore because of falling generation prices. But if we talk about specific systems, maybe also with energy storage in order to avoid blackouts and renewable energy plants with black start capacity, which are very interesting. So you have at least a base load, but to supply a hospital even for longer period with energy. I think these are, let's say, the middle high-hanging fruits that are quite expensive. And I think you, Andrei, you explained before, there's a simple calculation. What are the marginal abatement costs? No? And I guess this is a very important number. How much money do these systems need to be implemented, and that businesses can offer these solutions not with based on subsidies, but with a carbon pricing subsidy from carbon credit sales.
Maybe I can add it. You know, technically, it's hard to say unless you know details. Is there things like additionality and baselines? You know, that would decide, you know, to what degree the project is eligible, and also how, you know, how much the support can be possibly through carbon finance. But as I was saying earlier, you know, there's the uniqueness of Ukrainian situation right now is what is that you're comparing with? You're comparing with a situation of no energy at all, or a diesel generator. And then suddenly there are other methodologies that actually can be applicable to you. And just not knowing enough, honestly, it's hard to say. But there can be things that you can try to look into, and definitely also sort of build your case with the government as well, so that this is covered, and build your case also with us, with the expert community, because in the end, when it comes, say, to those that assess the projects, it's harder to make this decision unless the case has been well researched and sort of documented and peer reviewed.
Thank you very much. We are coming to an end of this very interesting discussion. Thank you all, Olga, Andrei, Jack, and Nico. Thanks for your contributions. Thanks for this very interesting expert panel discussion, and thanks to the audience. I wish you all a successful conference.
Thank you very much, Lauren.
Thank you. Thank you for this interesting discussion. Thank you.